Hi there, Scott Wheeler here. You can find more of our videos by searching Gospel for Africa on YouTube. And I was just considering earlier the whole aspect of the media and the role media play in society today, and how mainstream media push a certain narrative and people buy into that narrative, even against facts, scientific facts. People will rather go with emotion and feeling. And it seems like the whole world just seems to be led and swayed so easily by the media. And I was just considering how by nature we will always give ear to a negative report rather than a positive report. It's like we have this natural bent towards believing the negative. And I then thought about that example of the children of Israel going into the wilderness, and how Moses sends out the 12 spies to go and spy out the land. And God had told them, He had given them that land. He would go before them. He would scatter the enemies. And so anyway, the spies go out and they spy out the land, and they see all the good things, but they also see all the negative things. And when they come back, that's what their focus generally is. And so, picking it up in Numbers chapter 13, verse 26, it says this: "And they came back to Moses and Aaron and to the whole community of the Israelites in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They reported to the whole community, and they showed the fruit of the land." So there's the fruit. There's the bunch of grapes that two men had to carry on a pole between them because the bunch was so great. And Moses, they say to him, "We went to the land where you sent us. It is indeed flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." So here they are, the nation, presented with the incredible abundance of fruitfulness before them. But they say in verse 28, "The inhabitants are strong, and the cities are fortified, and they are very big. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the land of the Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites down by the sea and on the banks of the Jordan." Then Caleb, he jumps up and he silences the people. And he says, because by this stage they've overemphasized the negative, the fortified city, the armies, the giants, all the different nations that are living in this land. And so the people, even though they've been presented with this amazing fruit, they now are gripped with fear, and they become negative, they're discouraged, and through unbelief they are already convinced there's no ways they can possess this land. So Caleb silences them, and he says, "Let us go at once and occupy it, for we are well able to conquer it." Incredible. Joshua and Caleb, the scripture says they had another spirit. And I'm convinced in these last days, regardless of how much of the scripture we know, the Bible is abundantly clear that the love of many is going to wax cold. Now that's speaking to the church, speaking to believers. Many are going to fall away. There's going to be a great apostatizing. So in spite of all our biblical knowledge, all that we've seen of the goodness and the fruitfulness of God in these last days, because of what we're seeing coming upon the church, men and women are going to believe the negative report. And we've got to pray God for Joshua and Caleb's to be raised up among us. Men and women filled with the Spirit of God. Men and women who have another spirit, who are convinced that God has given us the land in that sense, and we are to go in and possess the land. And he gives this wonderful challenge to the people. Verse 31, "But the men who had gone up with him, the 10, they said, 'We are not able to go up against these people.'" They had already made up their mind. We are defeated. There's no ways we can take those armies, take those nations, those fortified cities, they're giants in the land, the sons of Anak, and we're not going to be able to possess this land. And so they preach a message in direct contradiction to what Caleb is declaring. We cannot go up against these people because they are stronger than we. Problem here is that they were looking at themselves. They had completely lost sight of the fact that God was their God. And that even the enemies were terrified, having heard the testimonies of the God of Israel. And we read this in the scriptures later with Rahab, where she says, when you were camped on that side of Jordan, we were terrified. Our hearts melted within us because we had heard of what your God was capable of. And yet these people, they forget about the fact that God is with them and they can possess the land. They look to themselves. And is this not the trap that we fall into in these last days? Where we lose sight of who is on our side. If God be for us, who can be against us? And in spite of whatever comes against us, God is greater. Greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. But we're going to believe the lie. We're going to look at what's coming against us as the church. And let me tell you, there are going to be great things that are going to come against the church in the last days. We understand this, what the scripture foretold. But yet God is on our side. And they presented the Israelites with a discouraging report of the land they had investigated, saying, the land that we passed through to investigate is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people we saw there were of great stature. We even saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak, who came from the Nephilim, and we seemed like grasshoppers, both to ourselves and to them. And I want to encourage us as the church. Even during this time of coronavirus, it's been astounding as to how many believers have bought into the narrative, have become fearful, and have even discouraged the church from wanting to gather. Discouraged the church with we've got to be wise and we've got to be cautious. The reality is this: absent from the body is present with the Lord. What are you worried about? We're just pilgrims passing through. And so we'll forsake fellowship, we'll neglect fellowship because of being wise. We've got to be courageous, church. There are worse things that are going to come upon us. And if this is the attitude that some have already begun to take in the church, giving a negative report to the believers, we can't overcome, this thing's going to take us out, and becoming fearful and promoting fear-mongering tactics within the church, how are we going to stand in the coming days? Man, I want to encourage us. God raised up people like Joshua and Caleb among us. Men and women who are fearless. Men and women who aren't concerned about how great the army looks and how great the opposition is and those fortified cities and the dreadful things that are going to come upon us. Give us men and women who have a vision and who can see clearly that greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. It's time for us to wake up as the church. The scary thing is, in the last days, the majority are going to believe the negative report. That's what the scripture teaches us. And so I'm challenging us as the church. What are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the majority report that's negative? Or are you going to trust God? And definitely there will be the few, the Joshua and the Caleb. It will be the minority who will be making a stand for Jesus in these last days. It will be the minority who are willing, in the face of great opposition, to say, come what may, we're going to trust God. We believe that God is with us. Few will probably believe that. I want to be one of those few. I want to trust God in these last days. As much opposition that we see around us, God, give me a spirit like Joshua and Caleb. Fill me with your spirit so that I'm convinced and I'm persuaded that greater is He that is in me than he that is in the world. We can't live our lives in fear, church. We've got to rise up and we've got to go and possess. We've got to go out and preach the gospel. Men and women need to be free. They need to be delivered. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, Jesus said in Luke chapter 4, that we might preach the gospel to the poor, heal the brokenhearted, deliver those that are in prison, and preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Don't you want to be a Joshua and a Caleb? Allow the Spirit of God to raise you up and you give a good report to the church. Encourage the church that we've got to press on in spite of in these last days. Let's be willing to trust God right through to the end.